Hello, my fellow voyagers, and welcome back to Soul Specs Healing Abyss. I am your host, Ja, and today's episode is titled Frustration and Emotional Awareness, and understanding how to recognize when we're starting to become so frustrated that we are no longer in alignment with our own emotional awareness. So ultimately, when we feel something, we want to understand where it's coming from so that we can align it with our decisions and actions, which hopefully brings us back to some sense of harmony. Now, I want to go into what frustration means to me. It's kind of like a tightening of energy or compression. Think about when you're starting to feel really overwhelmed and everything just starts to feel tense. And some people might say it's aggravation or anger, but really it's just an accumulation of energy, concentrated energy that has nowhere to go. This is why it's important to not allow yourself to get so hardened that your emotions are not able to be released. Because emotional release, or at least recognizing your emotions, acknowledging them, helps you release them or the expansion of them. Because now you're taking something from your inner world, from your inner understanding to your outer understanding, and expanding it to now your physical realm. So, understanding the nature of frustration is about recognizing the signs of frustration before they happen. So, the onset, right? Frustration that tightens energy in the chest, in the gut, in the head, they can be tricky because we have not really been taught how to navigate them. Most people would just assume maybe it's a headache or a stomach ache, but they rarely associate it with stress or anxiety. And often these clouds of our vision, or clouds that are put over our vision, it kind of can really interfere with how we perceive our feelings as either being difficult or easy to navigate, right? Because fear is going to be the number one thing that drives any level of frustration, that unknowing. Why is this not working? Why is this happening? Fear then kicks in, right? And then listeners of that fear either follow it or disregard it. Because if we're breaking it down in a way that we recognize the signs of frustration, then it won't be completely annihilated, but it will feel less heavy on us when we interact with that energy. So, what I want you to do is think about, how does frustration manifest in your life? How do you respond when you come into an interaction where you see that something is not going to go your way, and before you get upset, you can either talk yourself through it or allow yourself to engage and just see what your response will be after that. Either way, it works, but you still have to be aware that that's how you work. If you need answers beforehand, set yourself up to have answers. Answers that may be correct for you or incorrect. Again, it's all about the vibe. So if your body is not vibing with it and you don't agree with it, then more than likely you're going to have some level of frustration attached to it, right? If you agree with it, there's less frustration, there's less restriction, and you're more open to it. If you could, I would always say, become friends with your physical body, because it's going to always send you cues that you're tense, right? And when you're tense, that's when the emotional cues kick in, like impatience. So remember, physical cues are tension in the body, emotional cues are like impatience and feeling like you're just over everything. And when you're able to identify these signs, or when you start to begin to identify these signs, that's when we can start taking the first steps towards understanding and managing which emotions run us and which emotions we easily succumb to. Because for me, for example, I run on motivation, right? I understand this part about me. But the duality of that is I can also make myself run on E. I can be so motivated that I go to the extreme of making myself exhausted, and I'm not functional then, right? So now I feel frustrated that I can't get more done, but at the same time, my emotions are telling me to relax, take a break, take time, which takes that tension away. A good example that I would start with for a tool to utilize is journaling. I know this is everywhere online. I know people see it, but for a very long time, at least when I grew up, no one journaled. If you did journal, they kind of made it a stereotype and only teenage girls did that, but everyone should be journaling. It's not about gender or age. It's about being able to release emotions that don't belong to you anymore. So when you keep a journal, it allows you to track your patterns, right? It allows you to see which emotions you're entertaining daily. It allows you to see when you're feeling confused, what pattern what pattern is driving you. Like, in being able to see those thoughts physically versus just feeling them is a world of difference, right? And when you can take those thoughts and those physical sensations and in any event allow yourself to lead through your confusion, over time these patterns will emerge and you're going to start recognizing, that's where I used to have my triggers. That's where I used to fall short because Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I was mad about this one thing for 5 days. Was that necessary, right? And then you have to ask yourself, why was I able to be mad for 5 days? Why am I used to carrying this much stress? Two initial answers. You're avoiding or you're trying to bury. They could be the same thing, but here's how I look at it. I can bury an emotion and never think about it, never talk about it, but it will manifest into some level of a trigger. Now, avoiding it is, I know I'm going to get pissed off, but instead of walking away, I walk right into it and engage. So these are choices that we decide to, again, create or manifest into our physical reality. And the impact of any energy that is beginning to, what I say, tightening in frustration, when it starts to begin to build up, you have to ask yourself, how does frustration lead to energy compression in me? And what are the consequences when I don't walk through this energy? Because remember, it's not just an emotional struggle, it's going to become a mental struggle as well. It's going to affect your daily life, your physical life. It affects, again, how we become stressed, if we feel hopelessness, contentment with something. These are all levels of energy tightening around us because everything has just fallen on us, cascaded on us, drenched us in this level of saturation that now we have to figure out, how do I get dry? How do I get comfortable? Because now I'm starting to get cold, plus I'm wet. I don't see any resolution. What do I do? And this is where we talk about what are the physical and the mental consequences of holding on too tight to certain energy. And again, spoiler alert, there's nothing that's good when you're holding on to things that you feel you should express. Again, when you are working and you're sitting at a desk, I work in a very tedious job where it's a lot of numbers and a lot of data entry. And I know the computer is just a computer, but when things are entering the way I want, oh, yes, I can get really frustrated really fast. And in these moments, I had to stop and tell myself, Ja, you have done this job for almost 4 years now. You know the ins and outs of it. Why are you allowing yourself to still be triggered by something you know that you're going to get done? You know the deadline, you know the timeline. What's the stress? And for myself, in a situation like that, it's remembering the onboarding. My onboarding training was so stressful. It was so much that came at me that I think I allowed myself to stay there. And instead of moving past it, now anytime I get a certain report, I'm going to get triggered. And that takes time to retrain. One of the tools I use is called body scan meditation. This is not something that I created, but it is something that I utilize daily, which is when you engage your body in a way that anytime you can identify physical cues associated with confusion, that's when you're going to start paying attention to the tension or discomfort in specific areas. Because remember, the masculine and feminine are part of all of us. So your left side is your feminine energy, your right side is your masculine. So when you're body scanning, you can actually pay attention to, oh, my left side, this is hurting me. Why is this spot hurting me? And then you identify why it's hurting you, and you go through sometimes childhood regression where you start thinking about, well, this parent did this or this parent did that. And it starts to make sense where the tension came from, where the need to please comes from, or be consistent in a behavior that doesn't naturally come to you, but you have to do, or else you'll get punished, right? This is why it's good to reparent ourselves now as adults, because this practice of body scanning promotes mindfulness. It helps you connect with your body and the signals. So when we talk about that gut feeling, you understand that you can trust it. It's not just something that is a discomfort to you when you feel uneasy, because that uneasiness can still be a warning sign for you to not do it, or it can be a go ahead sign and try it because you've never done it. Remember, the body is a tool, and its main job is to be a sensory organ to feel things around us. And when it feels something, it's going to react. Our mind and our emotions have to learn to respond. The importance of acknowledging this frustration is, again, how we begin to walk those crucial steps towards managing it. Because, again, you're not going to get rid of it completely, and ignoring it does nothing. You have to really retrain your brain and mind to understand that ignoring this emotion can either lead to negative outcomes or positive outcomes, and you then get to decide which one do you want. Because only you know emotionally who you are, right? Emotional check-ins. This is another tool that I enjoy using. Periodically throughout the day, I'll just be sitting there. Life is content. Sometimes, I just feel a little melancholy, not sure why. And I'll ask myself, how are you feeling right now? And this simple practice cultivates self-awareness, and it helps you catch those moments of confusion as they arise. Because then I can ask myself, well, I just don't feel like I'm happy right now. And I can say, okay, that's okay. I can also go deeper and say, well, what's your definition of happiness? And I can go down that wormhole if I choose to. But if it's just a simple, you just want to get straight to it, why am I feeling this way? A simple, I don't know, is okay. That's acknowledging your emotions. That can release frustration because it still has somewhere to go. Not knowing still has somewhere to go. If you hold on to it, not knowing, it's going to try to bury itself. But if you can admit it out loud, then it's out in the ethers, it's out in the air, and it can now move and integrate with the universe the way it needs to. And this is how we start embracing that emotional awareness. And many people ask me, well, how do you cultivate mindfulness? How do you integrate this into your life daily? I think for me that the awareness involves really paying attention to what makes you feel at ease. Of course, there's going to be things in life that take you off that path of ease, but in your daily life, if you're doing things that are creating stress and anxiety and no one's telling you to do it, but you're just doing it out of habit or out of training, then that's when you have to, again, go back into that awareness and start cultivating that mindfulness. Why am I doing this? Why do I care to do this? Is this something that I integrated into my life, or is this something that was taught to me? Is it still useful? Is it still practical? Right? These are techniques to enhance self-awareness. And how we use it is then how we gain the mindfulness, and we get to play different roles in recognizing our emotions. Remember, you can be the mom, the dad, the brother, the boss, whoever you want to be in your energy, as long as you know who's talking to who and who is making final decisions. Because it's like giving yourself a mental toolkit for navigating super complex emotions, right? For myself, I have my flesh, who is then named, my human name. Then I have my soul, who I named, because that helps me navigate different emotions and voices. And then within my soul, I have my soul's inner thoughts and my soul's inner feelings, which I believe are past lives and training from our upbringing. And so, again, when we start recognizing these emotions as what they are and where they came from, we start gaining insight on how to release that energy through awareness, right? Because now let's talk about that release of energy. We talked about the tightening of and the holding on to, but let's really talk about the releasing through awareness. Understanding emotional expansion is key. Let me say it again. Understanding emotional expansion is key because simply, you don't have to do a lot. I know people make it seem like it's a lot, but simply acknowledging your emotions is going to help you release so much energy because it's not just about feeling your emotions. It's about acknowledging so that you can release them so that that tight energy in your chest or your stomach or your head or your gut is able to expand outwardly. And that expansion opens your emotions again to that process of being able to liberate you to your authentic version of self. We talk about autonomy a lot. Autonomy is being able to self-govern yourself. And the first thing we have to learn how to self-govern is our bodily functions and emotions, right? Because when we do this, we're able to acknowledge, like, say, when you're a kid, you got to learn how to hold your bladder first. You can't just be peeing all over yourself, right? You got to teach yourself how to hold your bladder until it's time, but you also have to learn how to emotionally express, hey, I got to go to the bathroom. And then that emotional expression takes away the frustration of the physical pressure, and then you go relieve yourself. It's the same thing with your emotional thoughts as well as your thoughts that lead to your emotional reactions because it is a cycle, but each way they have different outcomes and inputs. So you have to know that when you open up these realms of emotional opportunity, you get to then progress through stagnation of what was put in you. Again, I emphasize what was put in you versus what you put in yourself because when something's put inside of you, it's almost like a seed. You have no idea it's there until it flowers or until it buds. And then you just have this thing that you feel, well, it's just a part of me. It's always been there. And it's like, well, yes, but it doesn't necessarily identify you or your emotions, right? One of the things that I love reading and I was reading up on is it's called PMR or progressive muscle relaxation. That's a beautiful, fancy term that does not belong to me, but I call it ambidextrous activations. To me, it just basically means using both sides of your body, using all parts of your body, using all sides to each side of you, and not just being left hand or right hand, because no one is just left hand or right hand. We have two hands, clearly. They're both meant to be utilized. We have two sides to our brain. They're both meant to be utilized. So in PMR, it involves testing and releasing different muscle groups, right? Because when confusion tightens your energy, then systematically you start looking on how to relax your body. Like this last weekend, I did something. I don't know what I did, but I threw out my back and the muscles were just so tight and so tense. And I'm just like, what did I do? And I was in such a state of confusion because I didn't know what I did, but it wasn't about what I did. My body's like, you haven't given me time to relax. You haven't let me breathe. You haven't let me rest. And in that moment, I was like, oh my God, I'm not only not listening to my body, but my body is not able to alleviate this physical tension because I'm in this state of mental strain that is so focused on getting everything done that we forget the human body is just as spiritual as the mental body because the human body can act on its decisions. It can go out and integrate these things into life. And then the human is then the one who feels it. The soul can think it, project it, create worlds around it, but it's not actually experiencing it. So that's why it's important to acknowledge the body daily, weekly, month, every day of your life. You're going to have this body because that's what life is. And so learning how to listen to it is embracing the vulnerability, right? Expressing emotions can be daunting. I know. I am not one who loves sharing everything about myself. Believe it or not, the way that I utilize my podcast and the books and other things that I engage with, they're still superficial on a level because it's not all of my emotion. It's an observation of the experiences that I've gone through that's allowed me to begin to embrace that vulnerability, right? That makes it more powerful towards personal growth. And that allows me to then come out and share what I've experienced. But in my times of weakness, oh my God, no, I'm crying, I'm sad, I'm upset, I'm annoyed. And it's like, I don't really know how to connect with myself all the time. And that's where knowing your true self comes into play because when your avatar and the ego start to break down, your true self is right along the journey with it. But in that moment, your true self When you're flying down a hill and you're like, I can't stop. Who am I? Your true self is like, baby, you got wings. Jump. And you jump up and it's just like, I can't. And you jump and trust it. And boom, the wings pop out and you go flying. This is how we build emotional vulnerability. Other key tools, because I don't want it to always sound so hippy dippy. I do want people to take away practical steps. So, like, another way of embracing vulnerability is breathing exercises. Think about it. I do them all the time, and that moment of holding your breath, a deep breath, and you start feeling the oxygen leave and everything, your chest starts tightening and your body wants to fight because it needs the air. And then in the moment, once the fear passes, it's a really cool little moment that it passes. And it's like, oh, I'm still holding my breath and I haven't passed out. I haven't died. Right? That's the recognition of emotional vulnerability, embracing what the body does for you daily without you asking, but you also don't really control it, right? You're in charge of it, but you don't control it. So deep intentional breathing is a powerful tool because, again, it helps you relax, it helps you calm those nerves in the nervous system, it promotes that mental clarity, and it gives you a space of understanding. Because, again, the body is one of the most beautiful, beautiful tools that I've ever seen. And when I say body, that can be animals, human, the body itself, the physical form is so beautiful because it is the inner harmony that brings it all together. Remember, we're just bones, skin, and muscles, but spiritually, all of those things together are attributes and everything else. It starts to then pull together a bigger picture of who we are. And that, again, helps us restabilize triggers. Because if you know who you are, you're less triggered, point blank, period. Doesn't matter how many times people have tried to tell me about myself or what they feel about me. Thank you for your opinion. That is still not my inner world. I can respect what you view and how I walk in this world, but it's still not your inner world. And if you care to engage, I can let you in. But again, that's another story for another time. So, strategies for maintaining frustration. I want to tie it all together. I want to bring it to a point that hopefully it's all making sense. Because finding inner harmony is the key. The tool is managing and understanding how to explore our own strategies that we put into place, right? And then when we understand how to utilize that tool and utilize our understanding of what is the key to those tools, because again, all tools have a key. To me, it's like the plug that plugs it in. That's the key. Without the plug, it ain't going to work. Or the batteries, it ain't going to work. So the batteries are the key. The electricity cord is the key. And then, so on and so forth. So it's not about, again, eliminating frustration. It's about learning how to cope with it. One of the most beneficial tools that has been out there for a while, but I also love to integrate into my daily practice, is name your emotions. Name your emotions. When a confusion arises, continuously just label it. For some people, it works. For some, it doesn't. You have to play with it. But saying, I feel confused out loud, and then acknowledging that emotion, boom. Now the emotion is not moving all over your body. It's not trying to integrate into other parts of you. Now you've pinpointed it, you nailed it to a board, and now you get to interact with it. And this act of recognition is the first step in managing frustration and preventing it from escalating. Because now that you put a pin in it, that's where that term comes from. Put a pin in it. We'll come back to it. Then you get to go back and say, what is this thing and where did it come from? Because it's just been living in the darkness of my emotions and my soul, and I had no idea it was even there. And this is where I talk a lot about emotional intelligence. Understanding how to strengthen your emotional intelligence is always going to be the end result, right? The next stop. Obtaining that heightened emotional awareness contributes to emotional intelligence. And then the remarkable benefits that come with it is what we call sovereignty and things that we relate to spiritually about how to maintain our health, our mind, our body, all of it, right? It all comes back together. Because I am one who seeks feedback, may it be through reading, writing, watching a webinar, YouTube, talking to people. If confusion stems from a specific situation, I'm instantly going to try to get feedback and others who are involved and just ask questions. Again, if no one's involved, then that's all me. But if someone's involved, I want open communication that not only provides clarity, but also fosters understanding of what that situation was, because then that helps reduce the potential for negative outcomes in future situations. You know what I mean? Like, if someone says they don't like something about you, let them feel that way. Who cares? Okay, cool. That doesn't mean anything to me. But if it's something that you genuinely want to know why, then that's when you seek feedback. Oh, okay, well, I can't stop you from feeling how you feel, but is there anything in particular that you want to point out about me that I can bring to my awareness? Hey, I've done that a lot of times and people are shocked because I'm like, I want to know. I'm not bothered by it, but at the same time, I don't want to come off as somebody who's purposely trying to portray a certain emotion or evoke a certain emotion in someone if I know that that's not my intent or intention, right? So this is where balancing your life in a way that you can feel safe. I'm always talking about safe spaces. You always want a safe space to create. Creation is not just writing or drawing. Creation is anytime you're able to make space for something new, and then that new thing can come take up space there and thrive there and live there, right? If you only have old things sitting in new spaces, there's no room. This is why, cleanliness, they say, is next to godliness. I'm not saying people need to be perfectly clean, but, freshening up your space once in a while really does help bring in new energy. And I think it's important to understand that that nurturing yourself is another level of loving yourself, which is, again, reintegrating parenting skills to that inner child who feels frustrated when they don't know. And instead of throwing a tantrum, now you've been able to rebalance your life in your adulthood. So now you're the parent who can then speak to that child and say, we're good, baby. Don't worry about it. We're good. What I want to ask is, how do we maintain inner peace and well-being amidst the chaos of daily life? This one is not easy. But I found for myself isolation. Not forever, but when you start feeling like things are just messing with your life and everything's not going right, isolate. Just take a break from everything and everyone. If you need to let them know you're taking a break, so be it. If not, just dip off and do what you got to do. I mean, of course, if you have responsibilities, you want to let people know that you're dipping off. But like me, myself, I'm single. I live by myself. I don't need to tell people that I'm taking a break from society. So I do it when I need to. At home, I have a personal massager. I watch cartoons. I make the food I like. I listen to music. I relax. This brings me back to center. This is a strategy that I use. It's a strategy that you can use too. It's just about being emotionally aware and being able to, again, find that delicate balance, craft the life you want that resonates with your true self, and then you can bring it back to a space where that tension of holding on doesn't feel so heavy, right? That's the main thing that it's all about, is knowing that when you don't know, you just don't know, but don't beat yourself up over it. I am one of those people who I could admit I am and was super hard on myself. I'm learning how not to be. I don't mean like I talk down to myself. I mean like I'm always trying to create more and produce more. And that creates tension in me where I feel like, what am I doing all this for? And then my body's like, because you love to create. So don't make it about work. Make it fun. And then that's the key. Fun is the key. And then the creation is the tool. And then allowing myself to put fun and creation together is what's, going to alleviate that stress, going to alleviate that frustration, and bring it back to center, bring it back to peace, bring it back to harmony. So let's summarize some of the key takeaways. Daily mindfulness routine. Create one, have one, implement one. It's so vital to establish a daily mindfulness routine that incorporates activities like meditation, walking, consistent practice of acknowledging your emotions. Again, you don't have to do anything, just acknowledge them, because all of this enhances the overall self-awareness, making it easier to identify what we need to understand as confusion in our emotions. and get out of that analysis paralysis, right? 2, emotional journaling. Write about your confusing emotions in a dedicated emotional journal. Just get any type of journal, doesn't matter, piece of paper, whatever. You can do it on your phone, but just get something where you start feeling confusion and you don't know why you don't have an answer. You don't know why it confuses you so much or why it invokes so much emotion out of you. Journal it. This not only will help release pent up energy, but it also allows you to explore the root cause of this confusion, which then fosters that deep emotional awareness that I've been talking about. 3, creative expression. Engage in creative outlets such as art, music, whatever you need to do to express emotions. Art is not about being perfect. It's always been about expression. There's always going to be some skill set to everything and some level to everything, but it's always about how you feel and what you just want to get out. It doesn't have to be pretty to everyone else. It doesn't even have to be pretty to you. Just get it out, because the act of creation serves as a release. And the end result can always provide insight into some emotional state, because you can step back and be like, I didn't realize I was thinking that. I didn't realize I was even feeling that. And you're like, these are those aha moments that we talk about when you're like, oh, wow, I've drawn some stuff before and I had no idea where it was even going, but it turned out to be so cool because, it wasn't about me trying to have some end result. It was just about me simply expressing. Next thing is share your confusion. Talk to people. Talk to people you trust. Talk to tribes you trust. Listen to podcasts you trust. Listen to people you trust. Again, and feedback is not your final answer, but it should be able to at least give you options to help narrow down that confusion. When you have trusted friends or a therapist or a life coach or whoever you feel like talking to, verbalizing your emotion will always allow for that external feedback and support to then come back in a contributing way that's going to help with your personal growth. Because even if it's not information you want to hear, when you walk away and you think about it, you're like, man, they right. Or, man, well, that's not quite me, but I can see where they were going. And since I'm not going that way, at least now I know that that's not an option for me, right? Because that's what I'm all about. Let's get all the options out the way that we know are not something that is a part of us. And then when you're left with 1 or 2, those are the ones that you go deep diving into, because that's, again, how we're going to start practicing self-compassion practices. Practice self-compassion during these moments of confusion. Treat yourself with kindness and understanding. Recognize that confusion is a natural part of the human experience, and the mindset shifts and falters emotional resilience when we allow ourselves to recognize that we're compassionate with ourselves. When we start beating ourselves up and getting mad at ourselves and treating ourselves like how society has, right? Because a lot of times people don't even notice it, like when little kids are mimicking play with with adults around them, and they're saying certain things, and they're like, don't, playing with the baby dolls, and they're yelling at the baby doll and spanking them and all this, and you're like, that is a learned behavior. It's quite clear that that's a learned behavior. And during that time of play, those kids are frustrated because that's stuck inside of them, so they got to get it out. They use their imagination to play it out. This is part of all of us. This is innately what it means to be human. So keep this in mind when you start to feel frustrated. Okay? So there it is, folks. Frustration and emotional awareness. I genuinely hope that you gain some valuable insights into recognizing, managing, and transcending frustration, ultimately embracing more emotionality and awareness into your actions and thoughts. And as always, thank you for joining me on this journey. I've enjoyed this episode because I am one of those people who holds a lot in, and it took me a long time to learn that releasing is healthy. All right, so thank you again. Don't forget to subscribe. Please share your thoughts with us through the links provided below. And until next time, take a deep breath, embrace your emotions, find that inner harmony. This is Ja signing off. Remain mindful, stay tuned, and always remember that we are specks of the universe in soul consciousness. Thank you.